What was the question?
The question was how to get both of them live at the same time. For anyone joining now,
We did it!
We're live on YouTube. We're now live on Facebook.
We're live everywhere.
We are live across the world. Hello, hello.
We have fans in Germany. We have fans.
Belarus.
Do we really?
I don't know.
We really have fans in Germany, fans in Norway.
Where are you getting this from?
Dude, this is from people that I know that come to the stream that I've met through other places.
That's exciting.
That come to the stream. We've got fans in
Norway.
Massachusetts.
Hello, Germany.
We've got Tennessee.
Tennessee.
Well, we're in Tennessee.
I hope.
We're definitely in Tennessee.
But anyways, welcome to the weekly live stream with Inner Solutions, where we discuss all things related to mental health. This is a place where you can ask questions about what you're going through, questions about an experience that you've had. And it's a place where hopefully you can come and leave with more clarity and more understanding of what it is that's going on with anxiety and mental health symptoms that you're feeling. Hopefully you can walk away from these live streams with a feeling that you're not alone, because there's other people going through exactly what you're going through. And at the root of it, we just want to help give people an understanding and a plan, most of all, a plan of like, what do I do when I have anxiety, when I have depression, when I have all these, whatever things going through my mind. What do I do? What's the plan? So we're an action-oriented bunch. We want to give people practical steps, lifestyle changes. We're not about short-term solutions here. We're not about masking the symptoms. We're about getting down to the root cause so that you can feel truly better and in the long term overcome whatever it is that you're going through. So as usual, we tend to hover around different themes. Tonight's theme that has been coming up for us is like health anxiety. And
put it on, buddy.
Some holiday anxiety.
Put it on.
So
Santa Ennis. Santa Ennis is coming to town. Let's just look at you, bud.
So whenever you're experiencing holiday anxiety or some health anxiety, the two H's, hopefully that is something that we're going to help you understand better. Feel free to start giving us some questions. If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, just throw in the chat section.
Let's talk about, we just made a video, but I want to talk about it. Let's talk about the root of health anxiety, because not only is it the root of health anxiety, but this is the root of most anxiety and most behavior. Why do you take...
It was scratching my head.
Oh my... Dude, where's your spirit? Where's your spirit?
It's not Christmas yet.
Ebenezer Ennis, huh?
I'm going to get visited by the 3 ghosts tonight.
I think it's important, though, we cover trauma, protective parts, how those form, and why those are so relevant in anxiety, and why those are so relevant in recovering from anxiety.
Yeah, so we were talking about the root cause of health anxiety being usually traced back to a traumatic experience. So, for example, let's say that a long time ago, you had a health scare. You had some, symptom, and you had to go to the hospital for it, and the entire situation was scary. Or maybe you were actually diagnosed, and you had to fight off an illness or some debilitating disease. Maybe someone was sick, and maybe you watched them being debilitated. Whatever experience that you saw or experienced yourself, it can leave a trace in the body where we end up developing this protective part that wants to keep us from getting sick, wants to keep us from getting hurt. And so usually this protective part shows up in the form of Googling symptoms. It shows up in the form of just making you very suspicious of every little symptom, every little sensation. It might make you question test results, where you just don't believe that you're healthy, even though all the results say you are. And in general, it can just make you obsess about the smallest possibility. I remember one time I was with my girlfriend and I was climbing a fence to get this baseball that had gotten stuck. And on the way down, I kind of scratched up my hand a bit. And I looked down and it was brown and it was covered with rust. And she made this passing comment saying like, "Oh, you got your hands covered with rust. You're going to get tetanus or something." I'm like, "What? What is that?" And she told me, it's this pretty serious disease that if you touch rust, you're gonna get it. And I got freaked out. I remember thinking, "Oh no, I'm gonna get tetanus. Why did I touch the rust?" And just in that moment, my mind went wild with the possibility of it. And this is very common with health anxiety, where you just a possibility of something bad happening can be enough to overwhelm you. When I got home, I started Googling the symptoms and all these things, and as I'm reading it, I'm like, yeah, oh my jaw does feel tight. Oh my goodness, yeah, I'm already developing it, which is of course impossible. You don't start developing it that fast. But as is usual with health anxiety, you might convince yourself or create those psychosomatic symptoms just by reading them. And then once I got to this one part, it said I can't remember exactly, but I think it said in the last decade, there's only been a few confirmed cases. And it made me realize how rare this really is, and how climbing a fence, as I've done many, many, many times throughout my life, probably is not going to give me tetanus. And it kind of settled in of like, wait a minute, wow, this last half hour was for nothing. Why did I freak myself out? Kind of felt silly. Maybe you've been there. Maybe you're like, man, I got really freaked out. And now I just feel silly about nothing. But that's the nature of the beast. So hopefully tonight we can dive into some of the more practical aspects of how do you identify that trauma, that event that happened, so that you're not constantly monitoring and scanning your environment for potential dangers.
Yeah, and raising awareness about the specific event, about trauma, is a lot like turning on a light when you're entering a dark room. That's why they call a lot of that shadow work, when you're searching to raise awareness about things that you're not aware of. When our minds can put pieces together, it becomes a hell of a lot easier just to soothe ourselves in the moment. So as soon as you kind of flick on that flashlight and shine a light on the event that is leading to the anxiety or stress you're feeling about something specific, then it's almost like this intelligent part of you can just be like, that's it, okay, we're scared. I know we're worried about, when dad died of cancer and that every sensation we feel is cancer, but the truth is we need to grieve the loss of dad instead of feeling stressed out that it's going to happen to us, because there's no rationality and there's no reason to think that.
Yeah.
So you work with that protective part, that monitoring part, that part of you that is monitoring every physical sensation you may be having or every trigger that you feel like is, anything that could be happening inside your body, to just reassure it and work with it. And it's important to know that these parts, especially protective parts, their intention is really positive. Like, it really is doing what it thinks is necessary to keep you safe, but it just needs to have a more evolved version of you, thought pattern, part of you, help it to reassure it and let it know, hey, you don't have to do this. Like, we're okay. We're really okay. And identifying it and getting in touch with that thought pattern is the start. And then it becomes maintaining that. So when you feel it more and more, just reassuring yourself with a lot of loving compassion. We're okay. I know it's scary. I know we miss dad, but we're okay. And there's no reason to believe we're going to get cancer or whatever that ailment may be.
100%. It can be challenging work to dive into that kind of stuff. So sometimes you might need support. Sometimes you might need a counselor. But nonetheless, it's just important to get to that root level solution and not stay at the surface, constantly trying to manage the symptoms with another test and another test, as opposed to getting down to like, well, what am I really avoiding here? What experience or what potential experience? But for now, why don't we get into some of the comments and questions here?
Yeah, and guys, I want to invite you just to just to ask your questions. It doesn't have to be related to the topic. Also, just feel free to check in. How are you doing? What's going on with you? How's your mental health? How's your heart? How's your state? How's your family? Everything like that. Are you worried about the holidays? Are you worried about anything coming up? We love to take Q&A. We have plenty of things to talk about if there's not specific questions, but we would love to take Q&A throughout the course. So don't be shy.
Can you move over the chat a bit so that I can? There we go. Got a screen here. All right, we got some people coming in saying hello. Hello, Laurie. Hello, Yoli. Hello, Don. Hello, Carmen. Hey, Lisa. Hello. Good to see y'all here. Good to see y'all.
We got a lot of hellos.
I love that. I love the hellos.
Yeah. I love hearing where people are from.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, we got Wisconsin, we got Massachusetts, we got Brooklyn. What part of Brooklyn are you in?
I want to see the Norways. I want to see the Germanys. Now it got me excited.
What's up, Orange County, California?
We got a question.
I spent a lot of time in Brooklyn, man. So welcome, Carmen from Brooklyn.
Lisa's asking, so if my parents haven't passed away from their health issues, but my dad has had numerous heart attacks and bypasses, and my mom has survived cancer, but every time I feel anything, I'm convinced it's a heart attack. Interesting. So yeah, your family's experiencing all these different ailments and conditions, and when you feel some sort of particular feeling, whether it's dizziness or tingling, for you it's associated with the heart attack, and all of the anxiety, you say, seems to be manifested in the chest. So to be clear, when it comes to being a hypochondriac or having health anxiety, that's sort of its own specific thing. And typically you can have panic attacks and anxiety and have some concern about your heart without necessarily having being a hypochondriac. So the reason being is because so often when we are experiencing anxiety, what happens is our heartbeat starts to feel really, really fast. Our chest might feel tight, very common symptoms of anxiety. And so, of course, in the moment, the mind can feel like there's something wrong with my heart, or there's a feeling of impending doom. And it's a little different from health anxiety when it comes to like being convinced that you have a rare illness, because when it comes to those rare illnesses, it's more of a mental thing where you imagine yourself as you're going to get diagnosed with this thing that's super rare, or something bad's going to happen in the future. With panic attacks, it's more like something bad's happening right now. It's like, I feel like I'm really about to experience a heart attack or something. And so that is it's a little different. So for you, Lisa, even though your family might have had these struggles, it doesn't necessarily mean that you had to take that on, if that helps. When it comes to Yoli's question, she says, my anxiety is caused because I currently work on a COVID unit. That's a tough one. So I'm assuming you're surrounded constantly by people with COVID, and it's just a very, very tough environment to begin with. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all. I hated what I just said. So let me go back, because that's just a huge generalization. One of the many cognitive distortions.
I love that.
I think there was a lot of people that I talked to, myself included, that when we didn't know a lot of information about COVID, it was almost like this boogeyman. It was almost like this noxious gas floating through the air, and I'm scared if I'm going to be infected with the gas, and then what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And it still feels that way a little bit. It still feels a little unpredictable. COVID to me reminds me of being, a little bit scared of the monster in the dark, except that this is not necessarily a monster in the dark. There is a lot of testimonials and accounts of what COVID can do, and it's just that unknown. Because if you compare COVID to a flu, many people die from the flu every year, but it doesn't have the same stigma. And I believe more people have passed from COVID. I don't know the statistics, but I think the anxiety part about it, Yoli, I'd love to know some more information. Is it of catching it? Is it of catching it and getting sick? Is it of catching it and getting really sick or even dying? I'd love to get more information because I feel like it actually depends a little bit on what the ultimate fear is related to it.
Yeah, because it's like when it comes to the possibilities, it really plays on that part of the mind that takes any possibility and runs with it. So it's like COVID, it could literally be from all the way on one side of the spectrum where it's like you don't get it, or if you do get it, you have no symptoms. Or it could be all the way on the other side of the spectrum where sadly you could pass away, or you could have some permanent lung damage. And so the mind will take that and go, oh, so you mean that terrible bad thing, that there's a chance of that? Oh, well, I guess that's what's going to happen to me. And so, but no, actually that is on the unlikely side of things. If you are, particularly, Yoli, I assume that you're under 60 years of age. And so when it comes to your demographic, you are in a very low category of what could happen. So, and I mention this because, okay, when it comes to probabilities, that usually doesn't really do anything for people.
No, especially with flying.
Yeah.
Flying is the big one.
You can tell people like you have a low probability, but it doesn't mean anything. It's just when it comes to this sort of health anxiety hang up, just the possibility of it happening is what gets you going. So what we kind of have to do is approach it from a different angle. We have to say, okay, what if the worst case thing were to happen? Could I accept that? Could I make peace with that? Because ultimately, if there's a possibility with that, what we have to sort of train ourselves is, number one, can I make peace with that? But number two, is there a way where I can kind of let it land that I don't actually have to worry about this in the way that I am? So, for example, working on a COVID floor, being surrounded by people with that. Every day you're sort of taking this this plunge into a risk. And if you're kind of gritting your teeth the whole time and saying like, I don't want to be here, I don't want to be here, I don't want to be here, you're just running your body rampant. It's like, it must be exhausting. It must be extremely exhausting. However, if you can sort of make peace with it at the very beginning of the day to say, I'm aware of what I'm doing. I know that I'm walking into a risk here, but let me accept it from the moment I walk in so that I'm not fighting it. I'm not telling myself, let's get out of here, let's get out of here, let's get out of here the whole day. And that can make the biggest difference. It can make the difference between being exhausted by the time you get home or by being relatively okay. Of course, the people around you, they might be experiencing fear. Maybe the other employees are experiencing frustration, and that can rub off on people. But at the end of the day, making the intention to say from the get-go, I'm going to accept the choice that I've made today, the choice to walk in, the choice to be here throughout the day, and to just as much as possible accept, and to stay in my own energy, staying grounded in my own experience so that I'm not just getting triggered by this person and that person. Yeah, there's going to be people that are upsetting, but beyond that, it's like noticing what is yours and what is not.
And just notice that the idea of, loss of lung capacity, the idea of what could happen is always worse than the reality of all of that. First of all, it's completely future predicting. It's completely distorted. We have no idea what's going to happen. And if you're present with what's going on, you're just present with what's going on. If there's no story, if there's no future predicting, you're not worried about what this could mean or what could happen. You're just in the moment and present with it. So there's a lot of different strategies to deal with that kind of COVID anxiety, right? It's practice mindful presence, right? It's identify thoughts that are distorted. Future predicting being the big one with anxiety and worrying about getting COVID. And then even furthermore, it's to do some meditations to get more in touch with the parts of you that are really, really scared, really, really scared, because they're just overwhelming you if the anxiety feels overwhelming. And so it takes a lot of courage and it takes a lot of confidence and you can grow these, to set kind of boundaries with those and to really honor them by sitting with them. The same way you'd sit with a hysterical child and say, hey, we can't do anything until you calm down. I'm here. I'm right here. I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to be present with you, but I can't have you overwhelm me. I can't have you take over the room, whatever is going on. I need you to not overwhelm me, and let's work. Let's do this together. And that can be the hardest part for people, is setting those internal boundaries, which can even be that idea alone, I think, can be very rich and hard to understand at first.
Yeah.
We recommend, so this is a part of a model called internal family systems. We recommend that you work with a coach or a therapist in doing that, because it's a very specific process, but an amazing one at the same time. We use it with clients all the time.
Yeah, feel free to expand on the question if there's anything missing, or if you feel like we could touch on more of that. But we got another question here.
Let's just say real quick, guys, we do, in the description of this, we are offering free first-time coaching sessions to those of you who are struggling with these things. It's a beautiful opportunity to get on the phone, get a personalized and specific kind of treatment plan or next steps that you can take so that you can really work through this, because, guys, you're not stuck where you're at 100%. Yeah. Right, next question. That's my pitch.
We got Sal. He's saying, got some anxiety about going to prison. So this is an interesting one. There was there's a couple stories come to mind. One was like from T.I. who had a prison sentence, but it was an interesting one where it was a year of jail, but it didn't start immediately. So he would have to go to jail a year after, like, today. And so people were asking him, like, how do you feel about going to jail? How do you feel, you're about to go to jail. How do you feel about it? And he would say something like, hey, man, I already have to serve 1 year. Don't make me serve 2. And I think it's a beautiful sentiment to just say, like, let's not think about that right now. Let's not go there. Now, when it comes to your situation, and I don't know the details of it, I don't know if you've been convicted and are going to jail, or if you have been recently gotten into some trouble and maybe you're concerned that you might be. So anytime that we're faced with some kind of future situation and we just don't know what's going to happen next, the mind can get really creative with a feeling like the worst thing is going to happen. But we just don't know. We just don't know. And when you come to that moment of maybe even going to prison, you don't know if it's going to be a bad thing. I know that might be like, well, of course it's a bad thing. But actually, a man that I used to work for and greatly respect served a 5-year prison sentence, and it was the best thing that ever happened to him. And I mean that. He'll tell you himself that he hopefully we can have him on the show one time. But he went to prison, and yeah, it did suck at first, but he began meditating within a year, and he said that within 3 years of consistent meditation and just basically accepting his situation, he was happier right there in that prison than he had ever been at any other point in his life, believe it or not. And so sometimes you can take that crappy situation and turn it into something pretty amazing. So the reason I shared those two stories is for point number one is like, look, man, if it's not happening right now, you don't have to, you're already in prison right now by worrying about it, basically. This mind prison is probably much worse than the physical one that may be happening in the future. And beyond that, what you imagine that experience could be like is not what it will be like. That's ultimately you're reacting to those thoughts about what it could be like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other things?
I love that because it's almost like the reverse if only syndrome. If only is like, if only I, had $10,000 in the bank, I'd be happy. If only I, had kids, I'd be happy. If only I did this. And so what your old former boss was saying is that he found a way to just be, and to find the reverse of that if only syndrome. I love that. I would just echo a lot of what we talked about with Yoli, with Sal, which is like Sal, the future predicting and the ideas and what could be happening and the things you see on TV and the things of feeling secure. And, I would really get intentional if you really want to hash this out. I tend to be very action oriented. I tend to go into my anxiety and want to process through it as quickly as possible rather than, kind of olay it. Write out what your fears are. Just write them down and see how rational they are. And then you can go to people who have been to prison or who may work in prisons and ask them questions about it, get some information. Then on top of that, I would really practice, mindful presence, like as Ennis is saying, just do some meditation where you're just with yourself and with the body. Start noticing the thoughts instead of observing them. Start stopping that feedback loop in that thought part of it so that it just doesn't stew and go and ruminate and exacerbate.
On that note, I think prison is like one of the scariest things to be confronted with, because it's like you're telling someone, hey, for 2 years, 10 years, it's going to be you and your thoughts. And you know how happy you are when you're all alone. And if you're somebody who's like pretty miserable when you're alone, then the thought of that can be excruciating. It can be a very daunting thing. However, there's that saying, wherever you go, there you are. That, I think, cuts to the core of why prison can be a heavenly experience for one person and why it can be a terrible experience for another. You look at these monks who they live monastic lifestyles where they go to a temple and they don't leave the temple grounds. They wake up, they eat some very basic foods, they meditate, they walk around, and then they go to sleep. And that their life is very, very simple. If you were to look at the emotional state of these monks, it's probably some of the happiest people in the world, I would assume. And you look at some of these people in prisons, and yes, of course, there is violence that happens in prison, and yes, there is difficult situations that we can only begin to imagine. And of course, the freedom, just knowing that you can't leave, it can create many, many different things. So I'm not saying they're the same experience, but I am saying that when you can be comfortable with you, then wherever you go, there you are. Whether you're alone or with people in prison or at a party, it's like at the very least you're comfortable with your own presence, and that can make a world of difference. And you can, whether you're wherever you are, you can start to work on that by doing all the things that we usually talk about: meditation, diving into your shadow work, looking at the parts of you that are unhappy, looking at the experiences that you haven't come to terms with, looking at the fears that you haven't resolved. All of this stuff over time can come together to create a deep, deep feeling of peace, regardless of the external situation.
Yeah. Dawn says, does anxiety ever completely go away? Dawn, we don't want anxiety to completely go away, because then we'll be walking into the middle of the road and we'll be touching hot stoves and we'll be stepping on rusty nails and getting tetanus, right? No. So, Don, what I would say is, anxiety is healthy. There is a line where anxiety goes from a healthy amount to a really, really intrusive and life kind of shaking amount. And so the answer is definitely yes. There is a point that, the majority of clients we work with get to where they're feeling, 60% less anxiety in their daily lives, 80% less anxiety in their daily lives. Where on top of that, not only are they feeling less anxiety, but they're being assertive about seeking out things that they still feel like they're avoiding or scared of, to feel the maximum freedom of navigation of life, where you feel like you are able to overcome any challenge, confident to deal with any situation, and it's like the most amazing thing ever. It's almost as corny as like a movie where you just like shed your skin and feel like you're like, yeah, I can do anything. I can have any conversation. I can confront any issue. I can go any place and feel happy, feel confident, feel competent, feel present. That's why we do this. Is I really went from feeling like a very locked up, shelled, shy, suppressed, self-victimizing guy to a very open, straightforward, transparent, confrontational, presence, and then went back to feeling very closed off, and so for me, it's kind of like when you see those before, after, and then after videos of people trying to lose weight, where they say I went fit to fat, or fat to fit, then fit to fat, and then fat to fit again.
There's an oscillation process.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's one of those things that when you find that there's kind of a formula, that there's characteristics, and you find out what your formula is and what your key components are, and key things to remember for dealing with your anxiety and feeling that freedom, it becomes way easier to maintain, because finding it is much different than maintaining it. But the answer to your question, in the way that I sense that you mean it, is hell yes. That's why we do this. Hell to the yes. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's why we do this.
Yeah, that's why we're doing it. We're hope. That's what we say. We're hope salesmen. We sell hope. And not blind hope, true hope, real hope.
Yeah, I think I've sometimes, I used to have I think I still do have a bad connotation with hope, because sometimes when I think of hope, and what I think some people see it as, is this feeling of, I've got this problem and I'm not doing anything to solve it, and I'm not doing anything to make really any meaningful changes, but I hope that somehow things get better. I hope that something will just happen and I'll be okay again. And so, to be very clear, we're not selling that kind of hope. We're not saying like things are just going to magically get better and everything's going to be okay. It's more like hope in the fact that problems have solutions, and the things that you're experiencing, particularly when it comes to anxiety, depression, and things of mental health nature, these are not life sentences. No, they're not life sentences. You can get better. You can overcome this stuff. There's stuff you can do. Cognitive behavioral therapy, internal family systems, diet changes, lifestyle changes.
Exposure.
There's so much stuff you can try and that really works. So yeah, to answer your question, it can go away, but you do have to do some work.
Yeah.
To make it.
It definitely is work. Yeah. Bud says, I've applied a lot of what these guys have recommended in their videos, and it has helped tremendously. Thanks, guys from California. Bud, the check's in the mail for the testimonial, buddy. Just kidding. That's a genuine. We get a lot of testimony. We're good at what we do.
I love that.
Right?
It's a good reminder.
Do you feel confident as a coach and a teacher?
There's days where I don't. There's days where I do. I think it's important to remember, like, as much as possible, these are real people that are going through what we went through. And I think whenever I remember that, it's a good day.
Yeah.
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 Lisa says, I have been with my dad a few times when he has had a heart attack, and it sucks. Wow.
Stop scratching the mic.
Okay.
It's loud. Yeah, please.
Sorry. I know why I feel this way. I'm not dealing with grief, so what is it? Interesting. That's a heavy
She doesn't
experience.
know. She doesn't know why she feels this way.
I mean, imagine, having seen your dad go through a heart attack. Very rough experience. She says, I'm not dealing with grief. So what is it?
When you say you're not dealing with grief, you mean like when you think about it, there's no emotion with there? As far as grief, meaning like you're not grieving that this happened? Do you remember the experiences, Lisa? Do you remember what you felt when he's had those heart attacks? Do you remember the emotions that you went through? There's two. So here's the tricky thing about our brains too. Our brains are very, very, very tricky. So there will be parts of us that are meant to block certain emotions and certain thoughts we don't want to think. So I've talked about clients of mine who will wake up and have these really obnoxious, like 10 seconds of a song playing over and over in their head. And when we do parts with it and we get in touch with that part of them, they might see like this. One guy was so cool. He saw this really hip DJ that was just spinning the same record going every pew, and it would just be like, the same 10 seconds of a song reversing the record. And when he got in touch with that part of him, that part was telling him like, hey, I'm doing this because you don't want to hear. I'm trying to block out something else. Like you don't want to hear what the other part is. So when we had that step aside, these really harsh criticisms and these really harsh, like really intense thoughts and visions, traumatic thoughts and visions came through. And so then we were able to deal with those. But there was this part of him that was kind of blocking. So what I'm saying is, you'll meet a lot of people who have had tough childhoods and they'll seem very stoic. Or they'll use mindfulness or spirituality in some ways to kind of present this image of them being very stoic, calm, collected, together, and they may talk like this. And sometimes it's really genuine, but a lot of times what it is they've adopted this persona, or there's a part of them that's their way of blocking the deep pain that they feel. And so you notice sometimes these people under stress will kind of go against that persona. And Lisa, maybe part of why I bring this up is what may be happening is there may be a part of you that's kind of separated you from the grief or separated you from the trauma. We do this all the time when we have to continue going on. Now, Lisa comes here every week and talks about how she has to save her family. She has to do everything for her family. Lisa, I wouldn't be surprised if you were very, very versed in a part of you that sets your feelings and your emotions aside or pushes them down to kind of stay focused on the task at hand, being helping your family, helping other people. So I would target that part that is, maybe not allowing you to feel the grief or not allowing you to feel the trauma, or maybe that, put you in, okay, what do we do? Dad's having a heart attack. Let's go. What do we have to do? We got to call the ambulance. We got to make sure get his legs up, get you very efficient, and maybe hasn't processed through some of that grief. And this could be me projecting, but that's something I've found in a heck of a lot of clients over the years.
I think that's a really good way to put it, where you feel like I got to go. I don't have time.
It's business.
To feel this stuff.
What do we got to do to get it done? I have that part big time.
Yeah.
Especially during a crisis. I'm very focused. And then after the fact, I'll have to consciously take a minute to be like, oh my God, like that was really scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, really scary.
I mean, I feel that sometimes when we're working with people, it's like, you want to put aside your stuff
right
to be there for this person. And I think that's a good ability to have. But as Jim said afterwards, can you go back and meet and greet all that stuff that you kind of pushed aside? So there may be a belief that says, if I start to acknowledge this stuff, it's never going to go away, or if I go there, it's going to be overwhelming, or something bad will happen. And the truth is, you don't have to be afraid of these emotions. It's like, at the end of the day, sensations they want to come out. They want to come up and be felt and be released. That's literally kind of what they're striving for. When you have a splinter in your finger, your body knows to push that splinter out. And likewise, when you have emotions that are stuck in your body wants to let those emotions come up and out. And the best way to do that is you can cry, you can meditate on them, you can just kind of let them be felt in your body so that they can come up. And the biggest thing is just setting aside time where you invite them to say like, okay, I'm alone, I don't have anything to do, let's do it. It's like, dear body, come on, let's process some stuff together. Let's unburden ourselves for a bit so that we can feel better. We got a comment here in YouTube, just kind of addressing. She says, the therapy you're talking about, I didn't understand what he said. Can you please explain how it works? So,
let me start. I just want to say, Felicia, I'm sending the link to you to schedule a free call. Because when we talk about internal family systems, which is what I'm assuming she's talking about, it's one thing to explain it, but it's another thing to explain it and have it practiced on you. And so during that call, we would be able to practice on you, and you'd really get to be able to see what it feels like to get in touch with these parts of you, what it is to honor every part that comes up and how you feel.
It's nothing scary. It's really just like a visualization and kind of touching different parts of you that are like feeling upset.
It's just it's really differentiating sensations that you feel and thoughts that you have into these parts, into these sub-personalities that are there. These are fully formed clusters of neural processes, to use the scientific term, which basically means you go in different modes. You have different parts of you that will take over. You know, you've got your business-minded part of you. You've got your fun, silly part of you. You've got all these different thought patterns and sub-personalities you've formed. So it's really getting in touch with those to be able to manage them better, because a lot of times they'll kind of start to hijack you with when they're really scared or when they're protecting more sensitive parts of you. It's not as complicated as it sounds. So the best thing you do is hop on a call or do some research and look up internal family systems therapy.
Yeah.
Dawn says, your mind always thinks of the worst scenario in thinking of COVID. So this is, you know, a catastrophizing part is a protective part, right? It's to, what's the worst thing that could happen so we can be prepared for it. It's a pill. It's a pill.
What do you mean?
It's a pill, like a pain.
Oh.
It can be a pill or a pain. Great intention to protect you, but it can be so exhausting when it's constantly throwing, you know, images of your car crashing or the plane crashing or getting COVID and losing, you know, thoughts about losing your brain function or losing your breath, your lung function. It's exhausting. So, I mean, you know, what we talked about before as, you know, the intention's great. It's trying to help you and protect you, but to help. Oh, that was in the video we talked about the Japanese soldiers, not this. Okay. But to help that part of you understand, like, hey, we're really safe, we're really okay. Help identify the trauma that caused this, you know, whether it's that you've been sick before, whether it's some of the things you've seen on TV, and get really specific about identifying the fears and help that protective part know it doesn't have to do this job, because a lot of times those parts are doing the job like they're carrying a burden to protect you.
Tell that story if we haven't already about the
Japanese. You can if you want.
So there in World War II, there was these soldiers who they didn't know the war ended, and so they kept fighting. And so what ended up happening was they had to get their commanding officer to basically go in there and tell them, hey guys, the war is over. You can stop. And they didn't believe them at first. It was, I mean, if you can imagine, you've been fighting for so long, it might be hard to believe that. And so what they ended up doing was they gave these, the soldiers kind of like a formal dismissal. They said, okay, you are really, really, working hard here. You've been working hard. Thank you so much. Here's a formal acknowledgement that we appreciate you and that you are dismissed. So what we want to do is identify the parts of us that are acting like those soldiers, where it's like maybe you experienced some kind of health scare a long time ago, and a protective part was formed to monitor all these sensations, monitor your health. And it just keeps looking for different symptoms. It keeps panning the feelings in your body, your environment. And what you want to do is kind of make a connection to that part of you to say, hey, you're dismissed. Thank you. Truly, thank you for how you've protected me all these years. But you don't have to anymore, or at least not with the same intensity. And then Wendy says, can the same be true for mental health symptoms? I find myself checking sensations and thoughts for feeling anxiety. Mm-hmm. Is there a root cause which ends up with the protective part developing? That's a really good question. Yes. For most people, the first time they have a panic attack becomes that traumatic event where they just don't want to have another one.
Right.
And so you literally, every time you start to have a little dizziness or fast heart rate or whatever it is, it's like you don't want to go back to feeling how you did that first time you had a panic attack. Yeah. And so now there's a protective part that's constantly scanning and reacting to those sensations.
Isn't that interesting? I've never thought of panic attacks, like the anxiety of having a panic attack being a health anxiety, but it really fits in that category.
Yeah.
There's a traumatic event, then you develop a fear around it. So you have that monitoring part. What is that? What is that? Is that, oh, what's that? And it makes sense. Or like, am I going to be alone and that's going to happen? And it starts to just catastrophize, make up these fears. I mean, it fits the mold perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
100%.
Yoli says, I've worked with Ennis for some time and it has helped me tremendously.
Thank
Yoli,
you.
I've been hanging out with him for a while. It's helped me tremendously too. I'm on this. Yoli and I are homies. So thank you, Lily.
Thank you.
Lizette says, hello. Hope everyone is well. And it just says, thank you, Jim, for your help. You're so welcome. Lizette says all of it. Not sure what that means. As a nurse, the fear is getting how it's going to affect your body. I'm assuming we're talking about COVID. Okay. So very scary. How it's going to affect your body. Sure. And this all totally fits perfectly in with what we're talking about.
Yeah, everything we've been talking about, like dealing with the sensations.
Yeah.
We got some Kimberly saying, is healing anxiety a gradual process or something that is an aha moment and you're healed? It's definitely a process, I would say.
There are I feel like there's like baby steps, leap. Baby steps, leap. Like there's some really big moments within there, but it's definitely a gradual process.
One of the big aha moments is when you can allow yourself to feel the sensations without reacting to them strongly. So whatever that sensation for you is, maybe it's the panic attack, maybe it's just the anxiety itself. But when you're able to kind of sit there and go, okay, I feel these sensations in my body, but I know that I'll be fine because I've always been fine and these sensations have never done anything to me. So why don't I just let them be here? And they're not that interesting. It's almost like you get bored with them. That's an aha moment for sure. That can be a big one. But I think in general, what you said is true. Like there's a baby step, gradual understanding.
And then there'll be usually a big bam, like beautiful perspective shifter. Yeah. I like the big bams. Stephanie says, I feel like I've been having really amazing days. I'm trying to be happy, but there's this little nagging thought where it's like, this isn't going to last. It's like this part of me is trying to warn me of letting go. Yeah, following you, sister. So I'm not surprised when something happens. I see the protective nature of this, and I'm viewing this as a form of protection, but how do I help the belief I don't deserve to feel happy? Wow, totally different. Did you guys experience this? Is this real? Am I really okay? I really want to be excited that I feel better, but yeah. So Stephanie, I want to share a little story of a client I had who was bedridden for years and then started to feel better. And then every time she'd have a small regression, even though she was kind of moving forward in leaps and bounds, every time she'd have a small regression, within a week, she'd have a larger regression. And she'd just get caught in a feedback loop of that. And she was so scared of going back to where she was. I feel like the theme of this week is being traumatized. She was so traumatized by being bedridden that lock and that the work was to just be present and let go of the trauma and help heal that part of her that was so traumatized by being bedridden, so scared of going back there. And I feel like what you're going through is an abbreviated version of that, Stephanie, where, there's kind of two different things, right? There's this isn't going to last, and then there's do I deserve to feel happy or I don't deserve to feel happy?
Yeah.
Two very different dynamics there.
I would say to begin with, it's like that this isn't going to last. So when you've been feeling bad for a while and you start to have a string of good days and you have a string of like feeling kind of maybe back to your old self or something, it's what often happens is there's a grasping. There's like let me hang on to this as tightly as I can so that this stays with me. And yeah, there's a fear of like, what if I go back? What if I regress? And so the same force that grasps onto those good moments is the same force that pushes away the bad moments. And you one of the things I want to share is like, let's just get over both of those. And I acknowledge that life is continuously changing. Every single day is different. This year is different than last year. Last year was different than the year before that. And you might say, like, yeah, when people tell me, I just want to go back to normal. Well, what is normal? When you were, is it when you were in diapers? Is it when you were learning how to read? Is it when you were in high school? Is it when you had your first real relationship? Is it 10 years ago? Is it that one day where you felt really good? Like, what is it? There's no such thing. Your life is constantly changing. Every year is different. And definitely every few years is very different. There's phases of life. This anxiety phase that people are going through is another phase. It's not the end of the road. You don't have to have anxiety for the rest of this trip. It's just a temporary thing. Good days are temporary. Bad days are temporary. Let's kind of jump out of all of those, and the big accomplishment there is, like, we're no longer analyzing and checking, right? Because what I really hear in your question is, I'm constantly asking myself, am I okay? So when you say this isn't going to last, it's like, you're right, this isn't going to last. Neither will the next thing, and the next thing won't last either, and the next thing won't last either. Good moments, bad moments, everything, life in general doesn't last. It's constantly changing. So don't hold on to the good moments as if they're never going to change, and don't worry so much about the bad moments as if they're going to be around forever. It's always changing. When it comes to this sense of I don't deserve to be happy, or like I'm never going to be happy or something like that, that's a little bit different. That's like, where do you begin on that one? Basically, there could be many things there, and that's best approached in an individual level. But so, schedule a call and let's talk. And I think we'll talk probably soon. But where we go from deserving to be happy is really identifying the part of you that doesn't feel that way. Because that's not all of you. It's not like all of you doesn't feel that way. But there's probably a part that's scared, like, if I let myself be happy, it will draw attention that I don't want, or it will lead to an even worse fall down the road, or even worse disappointment. So maybe it's better to stay not that happy. Whatever that belief is for you, that's where I think you'd have to dive in and look at.
Yeah, and there's a few different dynamics that can go on with I don't deserve to feel happy. There could be an inner critic there saying you don't deserve to be happy, or you don't do this, and then a part that's kind of absorbing it. Or it could just be a part that's just, very, very in pain, very, very wounded, that just feels like it doesn't need to be happy. Or there could be a part that is over empathizing with people and feels responsible to fix other people, and says, well, I don't deserve to be happy if these people aren't happy, or who am I to be happy if I'm, it could be a part that's scared to be alone, to be away from the sadness. Maybe you grew up in a sad family. All kinds of different dynamics that can be wrapped up in all of that. So really, really takes an individual approach, like Ennis was saying, to get to the bottom of it. Lisa says, talking about her father. So we were talking about, Lisa had some health anxiety about a heart attack. She's suffering from anxiety, heart palpitations being the biggest symptom of that trigger, her health anxiety. And she said, my father hasn't passed away. I'm blessed he's still here with me, so I'm not grieving his death. You may not be grieving his death, Lisa, but I want to share a little story about my father who passed away from cancer. When my father passed away, I was glad because he'd been suffering from so long. I didn't feel a loss. I felt a large sense of relief. When I grieved my father was seeing him in the intensive care unit about 6 months earlier, when I realized he'd never be the same. And I'm not suggesting this is exactly what's happening with you, Lisa, but there can be some really intense and potentially traumatic emotions that fly up, or events that happen before somebody passes, meaning the heart attack could mark something. It could mark his mortality. It could mark a change in the dynamic of your and his relationship, where you may become the caretaker. It can mark a hell of a lot of things. And so there can be parts of you grieving what had happened before, or the dynamic that you guys had before, where this was daddy, this was my caretaker, this was my mentor, or this was the powerhouse, and now maybe he's a little bit more, seems a little more mortal. There could be a heck of a lot going on in there. So death is not the ultimate need for grieving. A lot of times it's those emotional attachments we have to the way things were.
That's a really, really good point.
I'm really smart.
That's a really good point, and I concur with that.
Don't say concur because I sound smart. Guys, do you believe this guy? Do you believe this?
Where are the glasses? Give me some.
Here.
No. I need like smarter looking
No,
glasses.
okay, yeah. Put the Santa hat on. Make everybody happy. You're adorable.
So Stephanie says, I love IFS. It really helps me connect with parts that need attention. It helps to bring out what that part is really trying to communicate to you. And it's brought a level of understanding out instead of being angry or scared of it. That's a really good one. It's like, instead of getting angry or scared of these parts of us, it's like we actually understand them and see like, oh, so you're doing that to help in this way. And oh, you're actually trying to protect me from this. And it just brings so much compassion into the game. She says, I feel more compassionate towards this anxiety and panic because I realize it's actually trying to help. Understanding the message and being compassionate and letting it in, knowing it cannot hurt you at all, literally has been life-saving for me. Thanks to Ennis, who spent weeks practicing this. Thank you so much.
I just want to say something about anxiety. Anxiety is not always a protective part. Sometimes like certain anxieties can be. Sometimes anxiety is a really, really scared young part, a part that's stuck in a trauma or stuck in a place where it's so scared, and it needs the more developed part of us. And a lot of times when it's so overwhelming, it doesn't feel like there is a core of confidence and of calm and of productivity is not the right word, but like efficiency in dealing with life, courage. And so part of the work can be getting space, identifying the distorted thoughts and the distortion in the anxious thinking, getting space from that part so that deeper core self energy can shine through, because that's where your courage lives, and that's where a lot of those anxious parts can attach to, almost like a scared child attaching to securely attaching to a parent.
Yeah, it's like you do have parts, but there's also the you that is not a part.
Yeah.
We call this by many different things,
yeah.
But that you that is not a part has great power. It has certain qualities. Typically, it shows up as compassion, curiosity, calm, and that's kind of an amazing thing to see, because you would think like those are qualities that need to be groomed or taught, or nobody's born with that stuff. But what we find again and again is human beings at their core tend to be pretty compassionate and curious and calm and capable of healing their psyche, much like the body just kind of knows how to heal a wound, like a scratch or when you get some kind of bruise thing. And much like how a spider knows how to make a spider web, they just come out knowing that. Human beings actually do come out with certain mental healing capacities. We know what to say to these wounded parts of ourselves. We know how to give them the support that they needed, but they didn't get at that time. And so it's the root of trust, I feel like.
That's why a lot of this is a lot of unlearning. That's why we're looking at our irrational beliefs to source them back and unlearn them. Because once you unlearn that, you create the space for our innate nature to come through, our accepting, open, calm, receptive instead of reactive. And, you get more and more of that energy coming through, which helps to disarm the anxiety and the irrationality of it. Dawn says, I don't think I'll ever get to that moment. Dawn. That's some catastrophizing right there. You never know, sister. You never know. I'm telling you, it's not one thing you just like get there. It's one day you just start noticing, wow, I feel so. It's so much easier to navigate through life. For me, it was like confrontational conversations. It was anything from sending food back with a waiter, an uncomfortable situation like that, to asking for more money at work, to just confronting friends with things that I didn't like, or really confronting myself with some deeper truths, and having the confidence that things are going to be okay, that it's like have a balanced level of attachment and a balanced level of anxiety to know no matter what happens, I can balance the things I can control with the things I can't control, and I can survive and make the best of any situation.
And you don't have to necessarily have the moment to feel better or to make progress. The nature of a lot of these things is like they work despite how you feel about them. For example, when you go to the gym, if you follow a certain regimen where you're actually lifting the weights and you're actually doing the cardio and you're not overeating, your body will respond with weight loss and muscle gain pretty typically. It's like you can go in there. Let's say you go to the gym. You're like, this isn't going to work. This is never going to work. There's no way I can do this. The only dangerous part about that thought is it'll make you stop doing the things that work, where you'll give up on the meditation or the eating right or the counseling sessions, or you'll give up on doing the things that would give you progress. As long as you don't give up taking action, you'll inevitably find that, I do feel better. You'll look back and like, well, I do feel better than a year ago. And that's something. It's like, even if there's not a big explosive aha moment. So just keep doing the right things and the right things will happen.
100%. Well, guys, I think we're reaching the end of our live stream here.
Yeah.
What a handsome group of questions those were.
What a well-dressed group of questions.
Yeah, what a stylish group of questions those were.
Glamorous.
Yeah, I mean, I want to end today's session just with a bit of gratitude for the people who come here, to all you guys who are warriors who are trying to work through your heavy anxiety. And, we meet a lot of people who shut down, who go through really heavy depressions, who aren't able to fight as hard as you guys showing up here. And just understand that you guys coming to a place like this and doing the studying you're doing, or seeing coaching, or taking action to set up that free call, or to go check out YouTube videos that you find useful, and to fight the good fight, to make yourself, to make your network of family, friends, coworkers, and to ultimately make the world a better place. I just think it's amazing. And those are the type of people that I keep around me. I know Ennis is one of them too. And I just really admire that about you guys. And I think we all share that in common. And just want to give a debt of gratitude to say, I love doing this live stream. It's an absolute privilege to be able to work with people and engage with people one-on-one through group coaching, and through all the things that we do. So just thank you guys so much for coming here and sharing your stories and being so brave about it.
Yeah, 100%. I concur.
On that note, guys, we will be back next week, so we'll see you one more week before Christmas if that's what you're celebrating. But other than that, just know that no matter how long you've been struggling, no matter how intense it is, no matter how hopeless you may feel, you're never stuck. You might just need some help. Lots of love to you guys and good mental health. Wait, we're still...